Greetings everyone and welcome back to another Starship review. Today we're going to take a look at the Verity Legendary Command Dreadnought Cruiser, aka the Odyssey. This is part 6 in my ongoing series reviewing all of the ships in the 10th anniversary bundle. And do we have a doozy of an episode today? This is by far the largest review, just in terms of the sheer number of things to go over. The Legendary Odyssey has the longest and most illustrious history of any ship in this bundle, with 3 Tier 5 variants and 3 Tier 6 variants for a whopping 6 consoles and 4 traits to talk about, and a hangar bay. However, the Odyssey is unique for another reason. If you look at the 10th anniversary bundle, it contains all of the hero ships from the franchise, but the Odyssey stands alone as the only inclusion that isn't from a TV show or movie. The Odyssey, regardless of whether it makes it into official canon on the big screen or small in the future, is a homegrown hero. It's the flagship of Star Trek Online, and that makes it special, because it's the only ship that can rub shoulders with the other giants of Trek. Now that I've set the stage, replicate yourself a cup of your favorite beverage and brace for impact. Let's get into it. The actual chassis itself is a letdown for me personally, and I say that with no jubilation. Disappointment is a relative thing, and because I had hoped for this to be my favorite ship in the bundle, it had the furthest to fall. It's not a bad ship in any regard, and the total package has plenty to offer, as we'll soon see, but the elephant in the room for me is the bridge officer seating, which you may have noticed I place a lot of value on in these ship reviews. The Odyssey also has the distinction of being unique for another reason. It's the only ship in the bundle to only have one specialization seat. I find this to be completely mystifying. I said in the Kelvin Connie review that it felt too much like a C-Store ship, and the Legendary Odyssey feels the exact same way. Hell, even newer C-Store ships tend to have 2 specialization seats these days, even if they are always the same specialization. I don't know what else to say. It's just a bad decision on their part with absolutely no upside or explanation. As for the bridge officer layout, however, the story improves a bit. As a command ship, it has a command-commander engineering seat, and there's no way to combine commander and command next to each other in a sentence that isn't nearly impossible to say, and follows the 4-3-3-2-1 layout pattern with both a fixed lieutenant commander tactical and lieutenant commander science, with the lieutenant and ensign being universal. This gives you plenty of flexibility to run whatever you want from the Trinity career abilities, again in line with the general restrictions of a cruiser, including whatever cooldown method you prefer. Because it's a command ship, the maximum performance you're likely to be able to get is with a torpedo boat, but it just feels wrong somehow on this ship, especially given the bonuses from the console set. A problem I'm willing to overlook for the Legendary Galaxy, but we'll save that for its own review. So I've simply settled for a beam overload build that won't perform as well as it would on either of the Miracle Worker cruisers from this bundle. Still, DPS is not the ultimate benchmark for ship quality, and I can easily put out enough damage to steamroll any content I might be casually playing. Let's have a look at the consoles. I'll begin with the Tier 5 consoles from the Tier 5 Odyssey bundle. I tend to think of these as the fun consoles and the ones from the Tier 6 ships as the performance-oriented ones. First up is the Aquarius Escort, which launches a frigate out of the back of your ship to fight for you until you recall it. It comes equipped with quad phaser cannons, phaser turrets, quantum torpedoes, and a point defense system, which makes it sound like a badass, but as we've learned from the Jupiter frigates, things aren't always as good as they seem on paper. Still, it's cool looking, and I do have a fondness for ships that can launch extra pets. The next console is exclusive with the last one in the sense that only one can be active at a time, but you can have both equipped, and that's the Chevron Separation console. Much like the saucer separation seen on the Enterprise D, it detaches your saucer, giving you a maneuverability buff at the cost of some hull and shields, and converts your newly separated saucer into a pet. The animation for saucer detaching and reattaching is really awesome to look at, but I don't like using it in combat because I think the Odyssey looks silly with the saucer missing. The last Tier 5 console, Work Bees, launches 4 repair drones that repair hull. They last as long as they can survive, and like all low-tier consoles, the console cooldown has been reduced to 1 minute, so you can refresh or replace them when it comes off cooldown pretty easily. Sadly, the amount of hull they repair is pitifully low, and they're very difficult to see, so you don't even get the joy of seeing them fly around like you do with the Aquarius. I think the idea for this console is neat, but the execution just leaves too much to be desired. Onward and upward. Let's now turn our attention to the Tier 6 consoles. And as a bonus, we'll look at the Timeline Stabilizer, which doesn't come with this ship, but does complete the 4-piece flagship technology set bonus. This is a set that's so good it made the flagships top tier back in their day, which wasn't much of a feat for the Scimitars as they were pretty awesome on their own, but it was quite impressive for the otherwise plain Federation cruisers. The first console, Adaptive Emergency Systems, gives a moderate amount of all-energy damage resistance and a tiny amount of hull capacity as passives. The clicky of the same name gives 50 bonus all-damage resistance, going up to 75 as your health drops, and 30% Cat 2 all-damage, going up to 45% at low health. These effects are pretty good, and it's a nice approximation to the DPRM console. While it doesn't heal you the way that one does, it does provide a substantial Cat 2 boost, and all that bonus damage resistance will help keep you alive. The effects last for a generous 30 seconds as well. The next console, Dampening Wave Emitter, is the weakest of the Tier 6 offerings, not because it's bad, but because it's restricted to the various faction flagships, and since it's a science-based console, it's difficult to get that much value out of it compared to what you could probably do with it on a real science vessel. You get 15% shield capacity as a passive, and the clicky Violent Dampening Wave does a point-blank AoE that deals radiation damage and drastically reduces enemy energy damage output for 15 seconds, as well as applying a short disable. In my personal opinion, the only reason to consider running this is for the 4-piece bonus, but only if you really want that. The next console, Flagship Tactical Computer, gives a moderate amount of Cat 1 energy damage as a passive, and the clicky gives a team-wide flight speed, turn rate, and firing cycle haste for 15 seconds. The firing cycle haste is pretty good too, at 33%. Timed correctly, this is extremely powerful. Anyone doing coordinated team compositions would do well to have a flagship on their team just for this buff. And finally, the Timeline Stabilizer, which is currently only available as a single character unlock using an Epic Phoenix token to pick up the Crenum Science Vessel. The passive is a 15% cooldown reduction on science abilities, but the clicky of the same name does a point-blank AoE maneuverability debuff and also gives you firing cycle haste based on the number of foes affected, up to 30%, making it quite potent. This used to be a staple DPS console, and it's still good, as firing cycle haste is one of the most desirable things for energy weapons. In fact, the combination of Adaptive Emergency Systems, Flagship Tactical Computer, and Timeline Stabilizer is still extremely powerful, not only for their own effects, but because of the set bonuses you get, including 2% crit chance, 3 turn rate, and deadly response, which has a 10% chance to give you a Cat 1 damage buff when you get attacked while your shield facing is depleted. This console set should not be underestimated. The only reason it doesn't see more use now isn't because it's obsolete, but because the ships they're restricted to have fallen out of favor in place of other playstyles and energy weapon ships that have Miracle Worker seating. Despite that, they are a welcome addition to the Legendary Odyssey, and I highly recommend using them on your own Legendary Odyssey. I almost feel like we need an intermission. We still have 4 traits to talk about. Okay, so up to bat first, Adaptive Hull Plating. It gives you an extra 3% hull when activating a hull healing or command bridge officer ability. It doesn't work on all hull heals like captain abilities such as Miraculous Repairs, because I tried it and it didn't work, and it only stacks 3 times, and each stack only lasts for 15 seconds. My goodness, that's a lot of caveats for such a lackluster effect. Next is Checkmate, which gives you a 30% Cat 1 projectile boost and a 30% Cat 1 exotic damage boost for 15 seconds when activating a control bridge officer ability, which includes things like gravity well and jam sensors. It's not a bad trait, and the effects line up nicely with what you're probably doing anyway with a science build, which is where this will shine. But if you have newer traits like spore-infused anomalies, exotic modulation, and improved gravity well, just to name a few examples, it might seem a bit out of date. A good trait, not the best, but very solid and certainly something worth running on a science build. And now we come to the last legacy trait, Supercharged Weapons. Firing a torpedo gives a stack of supercharged weapons, which stacks 3 times, and each stack gives you the following buffs for energy weapons for 20 seconds. 10% Cat 1 damage, 1.5% crit chance, and 6.6% crit severity. These are substantial buffs, and with rapidly firing torpedo, you can keep up to 3 stacks pretty easily. After Fire at Will was nerfed to have a 20-second global cooldown, and Entwined Tactical Matrices was added, which can trigger fire at will every 15 seconds via torp spread, it became possible to have 100% uptime on fire at will again, provided you have a torpedo and those two traits. Normally only tanks find it worth it to go this route, but if you were doing a setup like that, then this trait would be a natural fit, since you're using everything you need to make this shine. Much like Checkmate, it's been power crept a bit, but it's certainly a powerful trait if the build you're using is right for it. And finally, the new trait, Continuing Mission. When you're affected by a command or fleet abilities, your team gets 5% maximum hull and up to 48% hull regeneration based on missing hull. To put it bluntly, the team aspect of it is quite nice, but it has limited triggers and the effects are just too weak. Unless you're making a pure support craft and putting every support thing on there imaginable as a gimmick, then I don't really see the appeal here. Okay, and now for the hangar bay. The Legendary Odyssey comes with Class 8 shuttles. The Elite versions are Class 10 shuttles and have a phaser array, a microphoton torpedo, and polarized hull, which helps with their survivability quite a bit. These are quite old, and while their damage isn't bad or anything, you can get far better, including the Peregrines, which are unlocked for everyone on the Fed side along with these shuttles. 3 ships in this bundle have hangar bays, and none of them have new hangar pets. I understand giving the Intrepid Delta flyers, that makes sense, and I also understand giving the Donnie the tactical flyers because, again, that also makes sense. But they had a chance to do something here, and they dropped the ball. The problem here isn't with the pets themselves because they're fine, but between this and the lack of a second specialization seat, it feels like they just didn't care or put in that much effort. I didn't choose to call these ships legendary, they did. This just doesn't feel legendary. And that brings us to the end. So what are my final thoughts? What I liked. I always wanted an Odyssey with a hangar bay, and now I have one. The amount of extras you get, including the traits and consoles, is quite high, and there's a good mix of fun stuff with performance items. It's an Odyssey, and that's my favorite Enterprise design, so I like that. The bridge officer layout is plenty accommodating. What I don't like, the laziness and lack of love. I have to take 2 points off just for the missing specialization seat and the hangar pets. Those shuttles are among the oldest hangar pets in the game. They are really banking on the old stuff to sell these ships, not putting any effort in anywhere they absolutely do not have to. We get new models and skins and new traits, and everything else is old. It's sad to think that the only ships labeled as quote-unquote legendary have had the least amount of work or effort put into them of any Tier 6 ship in the game, because at least all the other ones had a console that was new. In card games, this is called reprinting. It's not always bad, as usually it gives players a chance to get old stuff that was either hard to find or expensive in an easier or more affordable way, but it still doesn't excuse the total lack of effort. I wanted this to be my favorite ship in the bundle. I'm taking off another point for my own personal disappointment. I give the Legendary Odyssey a 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of the video and you liked it, please leave a like. And if you want to see more of my stuff and be notified when new reviews and videos come out, please consider subscribing. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.